Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now April 7th of 2025, and given that the Walt Disney Company and Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, they are all dealing with the overall box office metrics really falling off a cliff when it comes to Snow White, we already know that they are trying to still engage in damage control over this film, and it's not working to anything at all, because we already know that at the same exact time, they are beginning to cancel many different live-action remakes that were in either the early development phase or pre-production. We know that the live-action version of Tangled was already put on pause, and we'll have a lot more to talk about that, as we briefly discussed a couple of days ago. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So one thing about Snow White right now is that not only is Bob Iger engaging in damage control, but also Rachel Zegler. She keeps going on about how this is the #1 movie in the world, and all other nonsense, and it just keeps getting worse. But one thing is for certain about this film, alright? It pretty much came to a halt with $168 million at the box office worldwide, and it really hasn't been gaining anything, substantial enough beyond that ever since the Minecraft movie dropped in theaters on April 4th. Now, what's interesting about this is that we already know that Rachel Zegler is not taking the criticism well, she's not taking the box office metrics well at all, and reality is beginning to set in that this movie truly is one of the worst disasters out there, not just catered to Disney, but just in the entire history of film. And that's exactly why it has the IMDb rating score that it has. If you guys have not seen it, go ahead and check it out. It's right around Dragon Ball Evolution when it comes to how badly it's received on IMDb. But moving onwards here, with the Snow White box office officially collapsing at a higher rate, since the release of a Minecraft movie, those like Bob Iger and Rachel Zegler have been on damage control mode over the current status of the film. One of which involved Zegler herself, who recently got bent out of shape with the critics yet again, and the declining box office metrics. Now, Zegler delivered the following. The greatest revelation to me with our film, Snow White, was coming to the realization that we are still dealing with a toxic fandom culture in society, and it's a type of behavior that I think needs to be addressed, because it's obviously coming from a very political place. Snow White, no matter how anyone else wants to spin it, is the #1 movie in the world, because it's a film about fairness, kindness, and showing how to be a powerful female warrior that shows strength in the world, and the challenges that life throws at them. That's what makes our film the #1 movie in the world. You really can't just rely on box office reports by the trades, or critics out there that just like to do a new thing now called review bombing. It's very childish behavior that I think no actor should stand for, and I certainly will not stand for that as well. Nobody knows how much I sacrificed to accomplish this role. It took way more than standing in a dress for 16 hours a day. It also took tons of courage and bravery to accomplish this role. It's the 2020s now, and anyone expecting the traditional story of Snow White, I think, needs to remember that it's not like how it was 70-some years ago anymore. It certainly isn't. Women are finally gaining respect, but we aren't quite near where we should be just yet. You are seeing tons of false narratives out there, things like how your project is coming from a place that holds an ideology. I ask everyone to not fall for such nonsense. When you are an actress, you understand human emotion. It's like a superpower, and it is a great tool to utilize to understand what is really going on here in the world and how people react to a fictional character. Now guys, before I move on about what Rachel Zegler is just spewing out there again when it comes to Snow White, when it comes to the tail end of the life of this movie, because look, ever since the Minecraft movie dropped, let's be real, this movie is dead in the water. Alright, so for comparison's sake, alright, we know that Snow White so far worldwide, alright, like I said earlier in the video, $168 million worldwide. That is abysmal. Abysmal for a company like the Walt Disney Company. And when you go ahead and look at what Warner Brothers is pulling off with the Minecraft movie, what they actually received worldwide, get this, they already garnered $301 million worldwide. And that is way over their box office projections that they had some weeks ago, where they were projecting 100-something million worldwide. They really just underestimated basically what they were going to garner there. And so, look, This is exactly what happens when you double down on DEI, when you double down on the concept of race swapping and doing what you did with the dwarfs, becoming CGI models that look utterly ridiculous. It just really is a very good comparison when you look at Snow White and a Minecraft movie. Now look, Minecraft movie as a whole, yes, it has its flaws, for sure. It definitely has flaws in there. It's not a perfect film, but it's nowhere near, not even close, to being bad as Snow White. And I pointed this out several days ago that it most likely would not perform terrible at the box office. We all knew going in that this movie was going to do very well because it has such a large fan base coming from a Minecraft fan base that is just very, very large on social media. So that also helped it run up to 301 million. But at the same exact time, we know that critics aren't really enjoying this film. We know that some fans out there are divided over a Minecraft movie, but that's all it really is, a divided audience. And, you know, if you really look close at it, most people, not all, but there's a good chunk that are enjoying that film. So Snow White is a whole different story. It's a different animal at this point. Our Snow White film, she says, is about promoting what it means to also be a woman that doesn't need a prince in the traditional sense in that fictional world. We really thought it was important to do away with the prince that many grew up with in the original 37 film. We felt we didn't need that, and I rooted for that part of the story since it really just felt so realistic to how we are in the real world. Not every man needs to be a prince, but not every woman has to be weak. We didn't want a weak characteristic for Snow White this time. We had to show the courage and strength where she doesn't really need a man, or a prince in the full spectrum like in the 37 film. That's why Greta, Erin, and Mark, and even we all agreed that this needed to be changed, and for critics to have an issue with that, I believe, is nothing more than a case of projection. It's something that I think needs to be addressed. Now, if anybody's projecting here, I think it's Rachel Zegler, based on what she's talking about. The male character known as Jonathan in this film, that is obviously devalued by the Disney company on purpose, by those like Rachel, Mark, Erin, and Greta, that all agreed, alright, about how this character should be portrayed in the film. They obviously wanted nothing to do with the traditional prince from the 37 original, and that's another aspect of the ideology by Disney, right? They always like to strip down the male character's core characteristics, alright, that a lot of people associate with in the pop culture. You know, whether it's characters that are widely known, or characters that are up and coming, or anything like that. You see this time and time again with Disney, and this is just an ongoing phase by Disney that I think the more people that are very opinionated and they are calling out Disney, you're going to eventually have them cave. You're going to keep them in a boxed corner, and they have no way out at this point. This is exactly why, and I pointed this out earlier, why they are putting that on pause. The Tangled live-action remake, we already talked about this. They did have plans to race swap many of the characters in that film, and look, we're not sure of the exact specifics, but they did have plans of the race swapping concept for that movie, which obviously translates as to why they're putting this movie on pause, and likely getting cancelled. Alright, so overall, I would love to hear what everyone has to say about Rachel Zegler heading into damage control for the upteenth time now. It's getting ridiculous, but if you guys would like to really show me what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments, thank you so much for all of that, and I will catch you guys later.